Hello, and welcome to More Intelligent Tomorrow, a wide-ranging exploration of the potential impact of AI on the world around us, as envisioned by the future heroes of the human and machine intelligence revolution. Can technology allow us to finally achieve interplanetary colonization? We'll discuss this and more with Alyssa Carson on today's episode. And now, your host, Ben Taylor.
Alyssa Carson, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hi, thanks, Ben. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so great to meet you. So you're in school right now, currently, right?
Yes, I'm a sophomore at Florida Tech studying astrobiology.
And what is astrobiology for our listeners?
Yeah, astrobiology is basically just science in space. So pretty much like as a major, you just learn everything about all sciences. So you'll take every kind of chem, every kind of physics, every kind of bio, and every kind of math, and that's pretty much it. And then you get a degree in it. But basically, it's being able to apply those things to space. So the really cool thing about it is that you can actually apply it to so many different kinds of research. So you can really do whatever it is you're interested in. So you can study plants in space, bacteria in space. You can even study like planets as a whole. And so it's really interesting to be able to switch around between like the areas you want to study in.
That's interesting because I think I definitely appreciate that working in artificial intelligence, where a lot of us start on a STEM base, or what you just described. That's a great foundation for a lot of different careers. But what's your, I guess something that's known about you and your personal brand is you kind of have a laser focus on the career that you want. And so maybe speak to that. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, so totally like astrobiology and being an astrobiologist would kind of be like my main career. But more of like my ultimate goal would actually be to be an astronaut. But actually, to be an astronaut, you have to have a job to be able to apply as an astronaut. So that's kind of where the astrobiology comes in. But also, with a lot of the stuff happening right now in the space industry, astrobiology is going to be very useful in the future as we start going back to the moon and on to Mars. So, for example, like looking at a mission to Mars, a lot of the astrobiology is really going to be studying the soil samples that are on Mars, looking for any signs of bacterial life that's in the water that's on Mars, studying the atmosphere in general about Mars, because really we're going to be trying to get an overall composition of Mars as a whole to really understand what we can do with Mars, what is the potential there, and a lot of the same things with the moon as well. So astrobiology is going to come pretty big into the space industry.
That's really interesting. So the one of the things I wanted to ask you about was how much of astrobiology is unknown to a general audience? What are some surprising facts that you've learned about space that may not be common sense?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that originally when like someone from like I guess the general public would hear astrobiology, most people's like immediate reaction is aliens because astro, space, bio, aliens just kind of makes sense, I guess, to most people. So I think honestly the most surprising thing is just how much more it is than that. So yes, technically if you go into astrobiology, sure you could search for aliens. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do, then totally go for it. But it's definitely like a lot more than that. And I think really just kind of the idea of studying planets as a whole is also like pretty interesting. So you can actually search for other Earth-like planets and other solar systems, which is pretty crazy. So there's like a sweet spot to where water isn't frozen, it isn't steam, and kind of the distance from whatever sun that we're looking at. And so people actually study that and see how close those planets are to Earth, and to try to figure out how we were formed, how the Earth was formed, and all those things. So it's really fascinating to kind of see all the different avenues you can go down. But yeah, it's always so funny hearing that people's first instinct is like, oh, you study aliens? And I'm like, no, it's a little bit more than that, but sure.
Have you imagined setting foot on Mars? So 5, 10, 20 years in the future, you get a shot. Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, I guess my plans personally would be, obviously I would need to get at least a master's degree, work a little bit in kind of the field here on Earth. But I mean, I think kind of applying, I would definitely still apply to the astronaut selection process, hope for the best. And, the other interesting part about that is, at that point, once I'm kind of in my stage of actually being ready to apply to the astronaut selection process, it's possible that SpaceX could have their own selection process, and maybe they're having their own astronauts. And so I think that's something that's really fascinating as well, is that once I'm kind of at that point, I think I would really just kind of like apply to be an astronaut at where I think fits best for like me and my goals. But yeah, I mean, totally, if given the opportunity, I would love to be able to do that, and really just like contribute to space. But yeah, I think kind of a mission to Mars would, kind of like you said earlier, just kind of like the adventure side of it, just being able to have such a unique opportunity, being able to gain so much knowledge and do so much, and actually have the experience of doing it. I definitely think Mars would be such a unique trip to go on. Definitely a lengthy one, but yeah, definitely a unique experience.
I think something that's pretty inspiring about all of this is it really is core to what makes us human. Kind of the hero's journey. If we all lived in this beautiful valley, ate bananas, and everything was great, and there were some scary mountains, eventually some human would climb over those scary mountains and maybe risk their life doing so. And so I think it's fascinating because I think there's something deeper here where it's kind of core to what makes us human, right? It, is that something you've thought about or you've looked into? Our search for novelty, our curiosity, and why we're so different compared to other animals on this planet.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I mean, that's really why so much of the stuff that we do in space, that's why we do it, because we're curious, because we want to explore, because we want to know where we came from. We want to know any and everything that we can figure out about the universe. And so that's really kind of what space is. And I think a lot of people who are interested in space kind of share that knowledge of kind of the need to explore, the need to know more. And so it's definitely part of it. And definitely with the mission to Mars, I think for me, definitely it's kind of that need to explore and wanting to learn more, but also learning about like the benefits that will come from that, being able to help so many people possibly in the long run, in terms of space is huge. I definitely think about it like big picture, and forever from now, nowhere near the time soon, but eventually the sun will burn out. We've definitely learned that suns have a cycle. Eventually the sun's just going to run out of fuel and burn out, and so eventually we are going to have to learn how to go to another planet, how to live on another planet. And so definitely Mars isn't like the ultimate savior. Mars isn't in the same solar system, but Mars is really that first step in us really getting an understanding of how would we move somewhere else and live there. And I definitely think that we have to kind of start building those ideas. So we start building that technology. So, eventually we will hopefully become, the sci-fi characters flying around the universe doing whatever else. But in order to do that, we're going to have to start that process somewhere. And definitely kind of like with our need to explore, especially with Mars, especially people talking about colonizing Mars, it's kind of, definitely goes back to, way back when in history when they would just get on boats and just start going. They didn't necessarily know where they were going. They were hitting lands that they didn't know what was there. They didn't really know what they were expecting, but they wanted to explore and they wanted to build something out of that. And so I definitely think space is kind of like our next place in terms of doing that. And, Mars, we're going to go there. We have a relatively good idea, at least, of what we're expecting. But yeah, we're going to, do what we can there and kind of build off of that. And hopefully that can lead to something amazing.
So why haven't we detected alien life? Because I think that's become pretty popular that statistically there should be intelligent life out there. Why haven't we detected radio signals? Do you have a perspective on that or an opinion?
I think really kind of the best reasoning that people give for that is really just because kind of going back to like the time difference thing, when we are looking at a lot of the stuff out in the universe, we're looking into the past. We aren't looking at the present. And so, it's possible that we've already looked at a planet that has aliens, but since we're looking, 200,000 years ago or, something like that, way, way into deep space, then we're looking at such a history. And kind of like the same way, if aliens are looking at us, it's possible they're seeing dinosaurs. So they're like, oh, why bother going there? And so it's really crazy to kind of think of those perspectives that, we're really just looking at history rather than seeing like what's actually there. So, yeah, it's possible, yeah, we've probably seen a planet that has aliens on it right now, but we wouldn't know that. And so that's kind of been something pretty fascinating. And I think kind of like the idea of like the Voyager 1 and 2 satellites that we sent with all the sounds of Earth that have left our solar system, I think that's also something that's pretty fascinating. Even if it goes nowhere, or no one intersects it or anything like that. I just think it was a really fascinating idea to kind of put something out there, put our sounds as a planet, out into the universe.
Maybe it's a little extreme to think of it as a human, but could you genetically engineer a pig to be very happy running around on Mars with that atmosphere? And do we want to do that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the interesting idea because, kind of with Mars and the idea of colonizing Mars, our original thought is just changing the composition of Mars. And the ideas of terraforming Mars are definitely huge, trying to figure out a way to thicken the atmosphere on Mars. With that, a lot of like the water would kind of come up to the surface on Mars. Then, we could kind of progress in terms of trees and grass and the whole shebang of what an Earth would typically look like. So we have those ideas of terraforming, but we also have kind of the struggle of, how long is that going to take? Kind of an original estimate was like 300 years of that would take to fully terraform Mars, but it's possible it could take a little bit longer than that, which obviously compared to the millions of years it took Earth to fully form, wouldn't be too bad, but still, in the long run, it is a while to prepare something that would actually be fully sustainable for us to just live on. So it's kind of like a back and forth option of, is that even our best option? Or should we be looking to change ourselves to adapt to Mars? Which way would actually be easier? Which way would work better? Those kinds of ideas because, terraforming Mars would take a while. So it's something that we start now so that future generations can have that luxury? Or, do we try to work around it in a different way?
And what are some of the crazier ideas for terraforming Mars? Because there's lots of ways to do it. What are some of the ideas that you've been exposed to on how you could increase the maybe real quick for the listeners, by terraforming Mars, you mean changing the planet's atmosphere where you could actually just go and plant something in the ground and it would grow? And is it just raising the temperature? How do you terraform Mars? That sounds impossible, but people think we can do it.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the big ideas, a lot is just like kind of increasing the temperature of Mars. So Mars is definitely a little bit further from the sun, which means it's a lot colder. Not too much colder. It has its moments where it gets pretty cold, but really just kind of the idea of raising the temperature of Mars. And by doing that, the hope is that all of like the water under the surface, because we found loads and loads of water on Mars. We have liquid water, we have ice, we have steam. There's a lot of water on Mars, and so trying to kind of bring that to the surface would kind of be the first steps, and then the next steps would really just try to change a lot of that carbon dioxide to oxygen to start kind of building our own composition of an atmosphere. So definitely just really some crazy ideas, some kind of crazy technology that we don't fully have now. And so I definitely think that like the first missions to Mars are really going to be getting to Mars and really studying as much as we can about it to really see, okay, what exactly are we working with? Yes, we have an idea of everything that's on Mars, but I think once like humans are there, we're going to have like a full understanding, okay, like this is what we have, what can we do with it? Is it easier just to build habitats when the people who live on Mars just live in these habitats? They just don't breathe outside of, these confined spaces. Maybe they just, instead of clothes, we just wear spacesuits all the time or things like that. Is that just the world that Mars will be, or are there other options? And so I think that that's really the point of going to Mars, is really to figure out what are the opportunities with it, or how could life actually be on Mars.
That sounds very unappealing as a human because we're so social. Like even COVID lockdowns are hard enough. So if you had to be locked in a tent or underground on Mars, do you really want to be there? Compared to having a motorbike or a side by side where you're rallying around on Mars, breathing in the Martian climate. What's your hope for the future, 10 to 20 years from now, for society in general?
Yeah, I definitely think that in the future we are kind of slowly progressing towards, hopefully, I like to hope that we're kind of shifting more towards like, just kind of like international support for each other. I definitely think that like kind of like where we are in space, we're slowly shifting to that, to where, you know, it's not one country doing something, it's not one agency doing something. We're accomplishing things more as a world. And so I think like within the realm of space, that's something that we're definitely hoping to lean more towards. I'm pretty sure, I think for the Artemis program, and going back to the moon and things like that, I'm pretty sure there's, I think, 2 Canadian astronauts that are also eligible to go on those missions. So having like more of an international crew, and you know, I think as we progress in space, that there will be more of that international collaboration. But yeah, I definitely hope that that kind of like progresses more towards kind of just like an everyday life kind of thing, not just with space, not just collaboration within space, but kind of collaboration within anything that we do, because I just think that that would offer so many benefits to so many of the problems that we're having. Just because if we did kind of come together and try to accomplish really amazing things, we could really do so much more. And definitely within space, you know, if we had so many of these bright minds kind of coming together, we could definitely do so much more in space. And so it's kind of having that mentality for anywhere else down here. You know, we can solve so many problems if we work together in that way. And that's really why a lot of people kind of look towards space and kind of a way of helping a lot of those international problems. You know, it's really kind of the main idea behind space tourism, is getting more people up into space so they can see how fragile the atmosphere is. They can see that there's no borders. You know, up in space, it's just a globe. It's just a planet. You know, you can't really tell in distinct countries from countries. You know, we're just a fragile planet. And so I think that idea with space tourism, you know, is hopefully going to be something that could help a lot of that as well.
And you mentioned briefly we've had other influencers on this show, and we've noticed the bigger the audience, the weirder the weirdos, or like the trolls come out. Have you? It's you mentioned that briefly. Have you dealt with that negative comments or different people that you've had to block? And how have you processed that, or kind of siloed it away so it doesn't impact your day? Because I think initially it is upsetting. You have an emotional reaction. How do you deal with trolls and naysayers that want to pull you down or drag you down?
Yeah, I definitely think, you know, in my case, it is pretty unique because a lot of the stuff that I talk about, or even talking about going to Mars, a lot of that, you know, people, I guess, don't have really full understanding. You know, again, kind of going back, the general public doesn't really always understand what's going on in space. And so, obviously, it's kind of hard because some people don't necessarily see, like, you know, why would you go to Mars? Like, that's stupid. Just because a lot of there's just such a distance between what's actually going on in space and what people think really happens in space. And then at the same time, again, people are so disconnected from space just because it's really not a part of our everyday lives. So I definitely think that in that way, there's just been negative comments. And then also, it's definitely been, you know, through my age, and then just a way of like trying to prove myself, in a way of really trying to show people that a lot of this has really just been through hard work and not from anything else. You know, it's not just, I asked one person, like, can I be an astronaut? And they're like, sure, here's, you know, your ticket to space. You know, it's definitely a lot more than that, and a lot more hard work that goes into that. And then basically everything that I have done has been like because of the hard work that's been put in. And so I think trying to get that across has also been difficult. But yeah, I guess you know, a lot of the times, especially when talking to people about space who may not understand, I always try to see it as an opportunity to teach people about space and what's going on, and how they can support it in any ways like that. I mean, some people, of course, you just can't really get through to. But yeah, I think I've just tried to take a lot of that negativity in terms of like a way of just like people not understanding, and trying to use it as a way to teach people more about space.
I love your attitude and passion, and I can already tell you're definitely going places. And I think passion and obsession is a driver to take you there. Where can our listeners follow your journey? What's the best platform for them to find you?
Yeah, all of my stuff is under NASA Blueberry website, nasablueberry.com. But yeah, under NASA Blueberry, pretty much any sort of social media you could ever want to use: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, anything else like that. So yeah, definitely you can follow all the stuff that I'm doing, whether it is about space. Also, I've been posting my micro biology lab. I've been posting all the different bacteria we've been growing, so stuff like that. So in case you want to come see some E. coli every now and then, definitely have a few of those.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. It's been a pleasure having you on our podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.